Hello, this is Senator Lyons. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can. Hello, we hear you loud and clear.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to speak, and I look forward to offering some comments. I think I don't have a full prepared speech. I can certainly send you my comments in writing should you wish that, but I think it might be best to give an introduction and then allow for you to ask some questions and discuss the Vermont process. Of course, the framers of the U.S. Constitution intended that constitutional rights be granted to individuals and to the people. I've been involved in government for many years. I was chair of my select board, which is sort of like being the mayor of the town, for about 15 years. And during that time, I came to understand what it means to govern and to be governed. I am a biologist and a professor by trade, and my biggest concern in the Senate, in the Vermont Senate over the past 20 years has been in climate change and renewable energy legislation, as well as healthcare and healthcare legislation. I'm currently chair of the Health and Welfare Committee. I was previously chair of the Natural Resources and Energy Committees. So that's a little bit about me. But a democratic government by, for, and of the people is critically important. And I think the First Amendment, of course, guarantees free speech and a free press. The Supreme Court on January 21st, 2010, in its Citizens United decision, equated free speech with corporate spending on political campaigns. And while the economy might benefit from business success, democracy benefits when individual voices are heard. Democracy is forever altered when corporate economic power can silence individual voices within the democratic process. By allowing corporations to give unlimited dollars to political campaigns to market positive or negative political ads, the Supreme Court undermines our democratic heritage. The unfettered infusion of money into the electoral process leads to a loss of transparency, so important to open elections. A local resolution was passed, and we went through a process in 2011, and I worked with representatives from a number of organizations. I worked with legislators, local legislators across the state, and we, between the end of November and the beginning of January, we met several times. There was a group of about 25 or 30 people, just local citizens and legislators. I think that was really it. There weren't really any nonprofit organizations or others represented. And we drafted a resolution that we wanted to send to our congressional delegation. And that resolution was passed in 2012. The resolution simply asked the Congress, our congressional delegation, to please initiate legislation or constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. Following that, there was really not much that happened. As you know, not much has happened. And we in 2013, we invited Lawrence Lessig to come to Vermont for a weekend, and we called it the Mountain Meadow meetings. During that time, we met with the group of people, and we expanded the group a little bit. And we talked about the need for an Article 5 process to initiate a constitutional amendment that would effectively overturn Citizens United. Of course, there were other Supreme Court decisions that intervened during that time, so that it made it even more compelling for us to do that. So at that time, we after meeting with Lawrence Lessig, we drafted another resolution, JRS 27, and we had strong support in the Senate. I have to say, it wasn't easy to draft a resolution asking for a constitutional amendment. It was with fear and trepidation that I personally went in that direction because I was unfamiliar with the process. And I think that many of the people in the room with whom I was working, citizens, were also unfamiliar and not certain what the outcome would be. So we educated ourselves about the process. And as the resolution was passed, one of the best things that happened to us in that process was that we became aware of the wolf pack, and they helped us understand the importance of educating the public about what Article 5 actually means, how it happens, the number of states that would be involved, and so on. So at a very simplistic level, we brought people together. We had a press conference. We passed our resolution. The leaders in the Senate were supportive of the resolution, so the chair of Judiciary, the chair of our committee that oversees election law, and others all signed on to the resolution. So it was a process. So in Vermont, it was simply a real grassroots, and by grassroots I mean citizen grassroots, process to bring the resolution to fruition. Following the passage of the resolution, we had support from one of our senators, Senator Sanders, who was very excited about it. And then after, I would say, another 3 or 4 months or 5 months after we passed the resolution, Senator Leahy spoke out in favor of changing the Constitution to overturn Citizens United. In the meantime, we had legislation that was passed to regulate corporate donations and election donations in the state. That law was deemed unconstitutional by the federal courts and went no further. So at this point, the resolution stands. It is one of, I forget how many, 19 resolutions that now have been passed by other states, 19 states. Vermont, I think, was number 1. We, I think, did bring attention through our initial resolution in 2012 and then this one in 2014. In 2017, we had an interesting dilemma. One of our more progressive senators decided that we should withdraw this resolution. And the reason that he gave for withdrawing the resolution, I think, was a total misunderstanding of Article 5 process. So his concern was that all it would take would be any set of resolutions asking for the constitutional amendment from 33 states. So you could have 33 diverse requests. It wouldn't simply be to overturn Citizens United. It might be for the balanced budget or something else. And so we worked very hard to remind people that that is not the case. So that's a little bit about the process that happened in Vermont. I'm sorry if it sounds a little bit disorganized or simplistic, but the reality is it's all about people. Our state is a microcosm of other states. We don't have as many large corporations as you might in Massachusetts. We do have multinational corporations. We have global foundries on one side. We might have Ben and Jerry's. We've got Keurig Coffee. We have and others who work throughout the globe. But we also have a commitment to our democratic values. One of the things that I think about consistently when I think about this issue is how it was a bubble up grassroots endeavor. One of the first places in the state to come forth and support our initial resolution was a small town outside of Middlebury, Vermont called Ripton. And that town just stepped right forward, and the citizens voted on that resolution very quickly. That followed with over 20% of the towns in the state supporting the resolution. And remember, we had a very short time to get it up before the voters. I think we had less than a month to do that, but we did it. So we know that over 80% of the people in this country believe that the Citizens United decision is important or very important to be overturned. We know that. And I think that we all support our businesses. We support our corporations. We do not want to have economic devastation. But we also don't want to have a devastation of our democracy. As an elected official, I fully understand my role, and I fully understand that I should not be dictated to by any organization or corporation. And so when we raise money in Vermont, some of us are probably pretty careful about limiting the donations that we get from corporations, but that's voluntary. So just a personal perspective there. I guess I'd open it up for questions. It sounds like you've had a lot of information coming to you from lawyers and others who understand the legal and constitutional process. As a scientist, I tend to be conservative in the way I make decisions. And I was very conservative in how I made this decision. It wasn't easy for me to move to a belief that constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United is what we should be doing. And yet I believe that I, as well as millions of others in our country, believe that we should do this. Our laws are turned aside too frequently, as they were in the Citizens United case, to leave it to a legislative process. And with the dysfunction that we currently have in Congress, regardless of who's in charge, we're not going to see an alteration to Citizens United decision. I did notice in the referendum that went out to the voters of the state that the pro side didn't say anything about Citizens United, but the con side did, but it was supporting free speech. I'm not sure that Citizens United supports free speech. It supports open and free giving of funds. So I guess I'd say questions.
Thank you very much. This is Kostas Panagopoulos, one of the commissioners. Thank you for your testimony. I was wondering the extent to which you engaged in any efforts to coordinate with other states or other entities or groups or activists in other states in your efforts, and whether you found that helpful in your initiatives in Vermont, or if you just focused almost entirely on what was happening within the state.
Well, that's a really good question. You know, as we started the process, it was really a startling decision, and so the reaction in the state was that people were just startled by the decision. So as I put the resolution together with folks, one of the groups that did come forward was the Wall Street group. Remember them? Mm-hmm. Do you remember the Wall Street group?
Occupy.
No. Occupy, yes. They came forward and supported this, and I was really surprised. The group that we ended up working with was Wolfpack, they were excellent. They actually came in as we were passing our resolution and helped to reword the resolution in committee, to provide us with information about making the language so that it could be supported in other states. I did talk with folks from other states, but we didn't really, I can't say that our focus was outside of the state of Vermont. It was really focused inward.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission or those on the phone? Well, I had one. Thank you, Senator Lyons. You'd indicated up to 80% of the people would be in favor of overturning Citizens United. Could you comment about the source of that data?
Well, I think that came from a couple of places. I think Move to Amend. Oh, I should go back and say that David Cobb of Move to Amend did come into the state, and we did have a couple of workshops where he talked, and that data would probably have come from that group or from Wolfpack itself. We didn't conduct any surveys across the country to develop that information.
Thank you. Any other questions for the senator?
Mr. Chair, yeah. Thank you, Senator, for your testimony. One of my questions is, I always like to look at the other side of things, so I'm curious to see what was your opposition in the state of Vermont, if any? Like, describe who might have come out and why. I think you alluded to some opposition of as far as like free speech proponents, but can you just touch upon the opposition and what you believe that their platform was? Yeah.
Yes. So just going back a little bit, the ACLU national organization had drafted a statement against having a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. The ACLU felt that it was, contrary to First Amendment rights. And I believe that has since changed. I haven't kept up with their position, but that was really the only one. But the organization, the in-state organization in Vermont, was very much supportive. So it was interesting to see that difference of opinion. The real pushback that we got wasn't really from groups, and it wasn't from business. It was from folks who, maybe it was, I don't know, promulgated the arguments, but it was really about stating that Article 5 convention would become dysfunctional and not focused. So it could be any issue that would be taken up. So that's really where the pushback was. And so having had upfront concrete information was critically important for people out in communities when the local resolution was passed, and then in the State House for individual members, so that argument didn't win. But that was really it. There weren't businesses pushing back against this. In fact, some of at that time IBM was in the state. Now they've since sold their offices to Global Foundries, but members of the IBM community and the administration there in that organization were supportive of Citizens United. The reason that they gave, now I'm giving you the positive, not the negative, but the reason that they gave was that many corporations are sick and tired of this. Why should they have to put all this money out into elections and become extremely competitive? So we didn't get the pushback from businesses that one would expect. It was really fascinating. And to be honest with you, I cannot think of another group that spoke out contrary to this. And I traveled a bit. I gave some talks for the Bar Association that was organized by the law school and some others. And there were some lawyers who said, pushed back about the Article 5 process. But again, that's something that can be argued logically. So that argument didn't win out either.
Thank you. Any other?
That was
Noel,
good. Yeah.
any other questions from members of the commission, those in present or those on the phone? Okay, thank you very much, Senator. I think we're ready to move on.
Well, thank you very much. I wish you well in this endeavor. How many members of your commission are actually legislators?
One.
Yeah, so it's interesting, isn't it? Our government is made up of elected officials, and I just caution you about acting negatively on making this recommendation. I think it is one of the most critical things that you could recommend to do for our democracy. And having seen what's happening at the federal level most recently, it's really time for our democracy to be returned to the people. So thank you.
Thank you.